So let's start by talking about what is failure? What is failure? I'd like you to write in the chat, what does failure as a parent mean to you? So I looked up the word failure just to see what the definition is, and it's generally defined as a lack of success. This means that you can create your own personal definition of success to determine whether or not you have failed. Hello, Anne Gerard from France. So I'm curious, hi Monica. So what, we feel like a failure. I'd like to know from you, what does failure mean to you? And Tricia says, kid not doing well. Okay, can you specify that? Because if we are rating our parenting success on how our child is doing, um, that's going to be really tough for us to sustain over time. Now, I know the old saying, "You're only as good as as your least happy child," and so it is very difficult to maintain our own sense of self and self worth when our kids are struggling. But I'm still curious, what does failure mean to you? For all of those who are here today, I'm so happy you've joined. What does parenting failure mean? Does it mean your kid doesn't get homework done? Lori says, my child not able to adult. Anybody else? What does failure mean? So, of course, the flip side of what is failure is what is success as a parent? How do we measure success? Is it a child who gets all A's? Is it a child um, who can, be the star of the soccer team? What is success? So Annie says not keeping up with documenting meds, current struggles, phone calls, etc. So a lot of documentation. Trisha says giving up and letting the kid do whatever they want because it's too difficult not to do that. So these are all failure definitions. Giving up, letting things go, and just putting your hands in the air, not being able to keep up with documentation, my child not being able to adult, my child not doing well. These are all, very serious and tough issues that that you're facing as a parent. But I'm wondering, could we flip it on its head a little bit? What is success as a parent? So Tricia says success equals a kid who has self-esteem and can handle challenges. Ooh, I love that. That is great. Thank you, Tricia. That's beautiful. Um, let's see. Carrie says, um, hold on a second. Little technical stuff here for me. Um, Carrie says, um, for me, setting the example when it comes to organizational skills and time management. And success would be showing them I can be a good mama and embrace my ADHD. Excellent. Um, Scott, I can't get teachers, church leaders to understand how my kids' mind work, let alone understanding them myself. So that's kind of more of the failure stuff. Um, so I'm interested in the success because, we actually, I think as parents, I'm imagining you are more successful than you think you are. And particularly if the definition is that I'm helping my child build self-esteem and handle challenges. Um, if your goal is to help other people understand how your child's mind works, that could be kind of difficult because now you're ceding control over to somebody else. So I like this idea of success as a child who has self-esteem and can handle challenges, because that's something that you can actually actively create. And Carrie said, showing them that I can be a good mom and embrace my own ADHD. So the kind of role modeling that we're doing is also a way to define success. And uh, one of the things that's a failure that Anne said is not being able to help your child overcome emotional distress or cope with his suffering. I really understand that, because I think one of the hardest things for parents to do is to witness their children's unhappiness and their struggles, and we take those on as our own. I think it's hard not to. And we also feel like part of our job is to champion our child, to help them, in manage in the world and have people understand who they are. So these are all fantastic answers, and I really appreciate what you're doing. So success as a parent, I think, is providing for the welfare of your child, food, clothing, shelter, healthcare, education, love, and also, teaching them tools for self-reliance, catching them when they fall, nurturing self-confidence, love, and presence. Anne says success is when your child or teenagers accepts their differences, builds self-esteem, and can find strategies. Yes, and I think those are skills that we teach our kids that are lifelong skills, and they happen over time. Um, One of the things that I think is really hard for parents, particularly parents of neurodivergent kids, is we measure our parenting based on the amount or absence of struggle that our child is having. And, I understand this because I am a parent, and I know that it's extremely difficult and painful when one of my kids is suffering, even though they're young adults. And, I look around at my friends whose kids are the same age and they're not having those struggles. And so what I'm engaging in is compare and despair. So I want to talk a little bit about compare and despair. Teddy Roosevelt said, comparison is the thief of joy. So when we look around at others, and because of social media, it's so available for us to see how well this person's doing, and how this mom somehow in the midst of our latest COVID wave is making beautiful cupcakes and incredible dinners, and helping her kids, and we're struggling to organize their the medicine cabinet, and make sure that they're turning their homework in. It's easy to feel like you're not doing it right. So I think that looking on social media and comparing yourself will make you feel worse than you're actually doing, and it makes other people look so much better. And really, it's a facade. I mean, when my daughter was in high school, she said, I hate social media. Does anyone ever post a picture of when they're like have a breakout? No. Does anyone ever post a picture of, how they got a C on a test, and really, instead of a B or an A if they wanted that? No, no one ever posts that. So this compare and despair really lowers our self-confidence as parents and makes us feel worthless. So we have to reduce our active judgmentalness with positive self-talk phrases to counter what we're seeing. So I'm curious, what do you say to yourself when you see other people posting things about their happy and achieving kids and their beautiful family dinners? What do you say to yourself? Because I'd like to help you turn that around and reframe it. Flavia says, yes, extremely painful and definitely causes an increase of stress and anxiety. Thank you. So, one thing that I guess I'd want to ask, in along this train of thought is, what are the definitions of good parenting that you're holding yourself to? What are you holding yourself to? So, Trisha, that's extremely magnanimous. Trisha says, I'm so happy for them, but the face, the emoji does not look like you're so happy for them. So, I'm curious, that's going back to that question that I asked, what do you say to yourself when you see these people? What, negative or put down comment do you say to yourself in light of that? What's your compare and despair go to? Sometimes for me, it's, I'm not good enough, or why can't I do it the way they do it? Or that seems so easy and it seems so much harder for me. So, what are some of the things that you say to yourself? Um, and while you're answering that question, and I hope you'll put some of those statements in, Trisha, you said, I suck. Thank you for being so honest. Um, it's really great to have that honesty, because I think so many of us look at these things on social media and we do the comparison, the compare and despair, and what we come out with is I suck or I wish. Um, Ashley says, my son is 12. This past year, he was diagnosed with severe depression and social anxiety. It's the hardest battle of our lives. I've tried everything and so little has worked. He has started new meds, started counseling at school, and we have a warrior mindset phrases we say a lot. Lots of these issues started with bullying at school. I'm really curious, Ashley, would you be willing to say what some of the the warrior mindset phrases are? That's a tongue twister because I bet they would be helpful to a lot of other people who are here. Sarah Ellen says, I wish. Excellent. So, one of the things, and Crystal says, we all do the best we can, but I wish. Yes. So, at least when you're saying that to yourself, Crystal, what you're saying is, I'm acknowledging that we all do the best we can, but boy, I wish what my best looked a little more like that person's best. I hear you. Anne says, trying to do my best for the sake of my child, whatever judgment other people may have. Thank you, Anne. I think that we can only do our best, and we come to situations with our own limitations, our own baggage, our own history, our own abilities and capacities, and we're not perfect. And so when we may have challenges that mimic what our child has, we may have different challenges, but we are bringing ourselves to the moment. And this actually is what I want to talk about. It's one of the things I wanted to say, which is the value of showing up. Being present means meeting your kids where they are, practicing compassion towards them and towards yourself. We are all doing the best we can with the available resources we have access to in any given moment. So, one of the things that we can do is we can acknowledge when we stumble and we model accountability for that for our children so that they can acknowledge when they stumble without that pile of negativity and judgment about what a bad person we are. So, let's see. Somebody said something I wanted to share. Trisha said, in all honesty, most recently I say to myself, I'm doing the best I can. I love that. I love that, Trisha, because that's actually all we can say. And, when things are difficult, what you could say is, I'm contributing to this situation. I'm bringing if there's three of us, my 33%, but it's not all my fault because it rarely is all your fault. Carrie says, I think it's important for us to view failure as an opportunity and praise the hard work rather than the competition or the comparison. It has made myself and my child feel more empowered, always sharing with her that mommy will make mistakes because I'm learning as she is. That's right, Carrie. I love that because we are learning. If we're alive, we're learning. We're living and we're learning. That's part of being on the planet. Scott says, sometimes I should on myself. I should have done this or I should have done that. And why didn't I think of it in the moment? Right. And, it's very hard when you should on yourself because really, when you should on yourself, nothing good comes out, and it's, you're just going to feel bad about who you are. Donnie Feed, nice to see you. I think I'm not indifferent to others' success for parenting based on I partner with many resources um, to help me feel good about my best. And I try to teach coping skills when I manage myself and demonstrates allowances to their faults and to also cultivate autonomy. That's beautiful, Donnie Field. I love that. Thank you so much. Let's see. Okay. So, timer, your timer broke. Ashley, I am open and ready to be positive. Oh, that is a great warrior thing. I'm loving these. These are fantastic. Warrior mindset phrases. Fabulous. Um, I'm writing this down because it's so good. Um, Okay, I am in control of my feelings, or I'm doing my best, or I'm efforting, or I'm trying to control my feelings, or I am controlling my feelings. Wonderful. I also like that too. That's fabulous. Um, okay, Ashley, I am smart. I can make a difference in the world. It's okay if I make mistakes. Oh, these are just so amazing. They're fantastic. I think I should put them in a little article for attitude because I think everybody needs to hear these. I can make a difference in the world and I am smart. Wonderful. I love that. This is fantastic. Okay. And then there's one more I see, Ashley. Today, I'm going to be my best self. Or even something like today, I am being my genuine, my authentic self. Fantastic. Beautiful, beautiful. So Dana has a comment, which I really like. Let's share that. Okay, Dana, we never know what struggles others have when they're trying to look like they have it all. That's right. We never do. You know why? Because social media and what we see on the surface is not necessarily what's happening underneath. Now, I am somebody, I wear my feelings on my sleeve. I have my whole life, and I wish I hadn't. I wish I didn't, but I do. I think that for those of us who are a little more transparent with our feelings than we would like to be, it's harder sometimes to imagine that what we're seeing from other people isn't actually what's going on with them because that tends to be what we show. Teresa, I feel like even though I've given my son all of the resources, special education, done a lot of work myself with him, and he still isn't happy and can't seem to control myself, I feel like a total failure. Teresa, how old is your son? Because it sounds like you've gone, you know, very, very far. You've gone above and beyond, and he's still struggling. And in a way, sometimes kids have to mature. I can't tell you how many kids I work with who come back to their parents 5, 10 years later and say, "Thank you. I was difficult. I was struggling, and you hung in there." So that's something, he's 10. Yeah, so he's having a hard time. A lot of times kids who struggle early on for a long time kind of pull it together as they get older. The prefrontal cortex is connecting to the rest of the brain with a delay, and it's hard for him. He's just hasn't caught sort of hasn't caught up with himself. But that isn't because you're a failure. It sounds like you're doing a lot to give him resources and you're helping him. He's struggling. And at some point, you can't make it better for him. So let's talk a little bit than more than what you're doing. So it's really hard to see our kids in pain. First of all, we don't want our children to struggle. We love them. And secondly, there's some connection, particularly for moms. If you're a good mother, then your child is doing well. And that comes from really the Victorian era, where mothers were put up on a pedestal and they were judged by middle class mothers, excuse me, usually white, and they were judged by the success of their kids. And that is just such an unfair standard. Um, we want to actually be able to tolerate our sadness and our grief and our disappointment. And we want to help our kids learn how to tolerate their own disappointment as well. We all have to do this. We don't come into the world with a really strong disappointment muscle. We grow it over time. And that's the part of parenting that is so really horrendous at times when your kid is struggling over and over and or is refusing help or isn't interested in or isn't interested in continuing things that have been helpful in the past or just is kind of giving up because doesn't see any success. So it's really painful to witness your kids wrestling with academic, social, or emotional issues. And what you can do is offer your support. Validate what you're seeing, give observations and reminders of times when things may have turned out more positively. Be available for conversations, or ask kids to or spend time with them doing something of their choice. Maybe they want to go get a new game, or maybe they would go grocery shopping, so you'll buy food that they like, or they want to pick out the pizza and go pick it up, something that engages them. Loving them and letting them figure out something for themselves, and asking your opinion if they want it, or are curious about it, is much more effective for building self-esteem and independence than telling them what to do over and over, which makes them feel like you don't believe in them. Okay, lots of comments here. Thank you so much. Trisha, I'm holding on to that moment when mine comes back and thanks me as well as apologizing. Yes, I hear you. But maybe that's not fair to them because they were struggling. Yes, that will take a while. They are struggling, but at some point in adulthood, they may get to the point where they say, I couldn't have done this without you. Kayla, same for me. My son is 7.5 and in second grade, immature for sure, but very behind academically. Getting him an IEP now, um, looking for all the tips. Kayla, the fact that you and all of you see that your kids have struggled, have pursued interventions for your kids, evaluations, accommodations, advocated for your children, to me, that is not failure. That is not failure. That is the ultimate success. That is the ultimate success. You are seeing your children for who they are and you are stepping up for them. Ashley, I've been there too. It's so hard to feel powerless. It's terrible to feel powerless. I hate it. It's the worst thing as a parent. Um, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. I hate that expression. I'm not a big fan of it myself either, Trisha. Susan, after I had a baby, I suddenly had so much respect for how much my mom did back when I was a kid. That's true. Peter, well, it's nice to see some of you back this year. As a dad, I feel like I've failed my son for not being there for him as much as I would have liked. I think about all the what ifs and what may be, and I just hope he knows I try my hardest. You know what? He may not know that now. He may know that later, and he may know it, but not have words to put on it. Academic and social emotional issues. Yes, yes, Trisha. Ashley, how do I help my son feel time? He has a hard time transitioning from a preferred task to a non-preferred task. We have lots of refusal and attitude in those times. Um, that's thank you, Trisha, for the referral. I believe that there are some great tools on managing time in attitude that Annie can put up. But I think one of the things that you want to think about when you're trying to teach your kid to learn time are visual cues, whether it's a tomato timer, whether it's a time timer, that there's not just a warning, but a sense of actually being able to see time go by, and then to help them transition off a preferred device, particularly one that is very successful in their dopamine hunting, to the next thing. Sometimes it's maybe just putting a hand on their chest and talking to themselves. I'm going away from my computer and I'm going into the other room to eat dinner, talking themselves through that process, or you walking with them and talking with them. I would also link, what a desired goal or a desired incentive to easing off screen. I talk about that in my book, What Your ADHD Child Wishes You Knew, and there's a lot of that written on my website as well. Speaking of which, I have a downloadable for you on shame, because I feel like that is kind of the underlying topic that we're talking about here. So I put that in the chat. on getting on working on shame, which is where I what I want to talk about next. So, what is the difference between guilt and shame? So guilt pushes people to, amend their errors, to be accountable and make a change. Maybe I did something bad, but I'm not a bad person. Shame pushes people to hide or deny their mistakes and engage in self loathing. I did something bad and I am a bad person. And then you go from that into a shame spiral of all the ways that you are a bad person. Guilt, I did something that I regret and it was a poor choice, but I'm still a good person and I can attempt to change that. Shame, I'm a bad person for what I did and I can't fix it no matter what. And I think that a lot of parents um, um, really put a heavy dose of shame into their coffee every morning, and what I'm trying to say to you is that that shame is hurting you. It's also not making you the parent you want to be. You walk around feeling terrible about yourself instead of saying to yourself, I made mistakes. You know why? Because I'm human. Because I have limitations. Because I came from a family and I didn't understand, even though I had done a lot of therapy, that there were certain ways of doing things. I thought I had worked through this, but I guess I hadn't. I make mistakes. And that doesn't mean I'm a bad person. And I would have to say, for me, as a recovering perfectionist, that is the hardest thing. It's the hardest thing for me as a recovering perfectionist in my work and as a parent. So, and Nancy says, hang in there. As Sharon said, things do get better. I have lived it. My son in ninth grade in high school is doing great. Accept as a parent is the key. Love, understanding, and why and as I looked love and understanding as I looked stressed out and I wonder why. Okay. So this is actually a great transition into something else we're going to talk about today, which is this idea of mindful self compassion. So, a lot of times, parents, we blame ourselves for things we can't control. We can't control if kids at school don't like our child. We can't control if your child if your son or daughter is assigned a lousy teacher. Um, we can't control if they change the grading system and now it includes behavioral and emotional activities in class, and not just academic. We don't have a lot of control over the big picture, but we can go in and advocate the best that we can. So we want to manage the things we can and accept and figure out strategies for the things we cannot change. This is what radical acceptance is about. We honor what is and what we can actually influence. Now, mindful self compassion is slightly different. This is treating yourself with more kindness. How many of you say things that you would never say to a third grader with a skin knee? I do. I say things to myself. I forgot that part. How many people say things to themselves, sorry, that you wouldn't say to a third grader with a skin knee? I do. I say things to myself that are not kind. Whether it's I messed up again, or why did you do that, or you shouldn't have said that, or sometimes you can be so dumb, so stupid, impulsive, whatever it is, we say that to ourselves. It's cruel. It hurts us. It hurts us. It hurts our spirit. So we have to treat ourselves with more kindness. That doesn't mean we give ourselves a pass all the time, but we want to interrupt those negative thoughts that can lead to a shame spiral, those negative thoughts that put us down as parents with a rebuttal. Come up with some phrases that you could say to yourself instead of, I suck, instead of, what the hell is wrong with me, instead of, God, sometimes I can be such a jerk, or I am a jerk. What else could you say to yourself? And you can share those. Um, in the chat because I think we need to hear from each other what else we could say. So I say to myself, I'm living and I'm learning. Being human is growing. I'm supposed to make mistakes. I say all of those things to myself. I'm living, I'm learning, I'm growing. I'm supposed to make mistakes. That's what being human is about. What could you say to yourself? Trisha, wow, that was silly of you. That's great. Lynn says, yes, I am stupid. I screwed up again. Wow, that was silly. You tried. You're human. I love that. You know, you tried. You're human. What else can you do? Not much. You can learn from your experiences, and that's what we want to be able to do, right? We want to be able to learn from our experiences and maybe we'll repeat it 17 million more times, but maybe we won't, you know, maybe we won't. Maybe we'll be able to do something different. Like, remember when we're about to say something that we really should keep keep inside. Um, these are great. Let's see, you tried, you're human. I'm doing the best I can. Next time I will. While my kids were little, I made up the word stupid, a four-letter word, and we would say I was silly. I love that. Hug, excellent. These are great. So you want to be able to say things to yourself. And I would encourage you to write some of these down right now. Those of you who are on this live, and when you're watching this live, write down some of these phrases in your phone, on your notes section, on a post-it, so that you can refer back to it, okay? So that you can actually, when you are in a shame spiral, say, oh, what is that thing I'm supposed to say to myself? And you can look it up, and there it is. And then you can try to say it. Not easy, but you can try with some deep breathing. Let's see. Donnie Feed, perfection status only exists in Mars. There you go. Teresa Lynn, I did something like that once too. Let's try again together. Oh, I love that. That is beautiful because it is normalizing and it's showing that you can have a redo. That's perfect. Carrie, I will try doing it differently tomorrow. I will allow myself to feel it. All right. Nancy, I don't have all the answers. I'm learning though. Oh, that's beautiful. And that's an important thing to be able to say to ourselves, but also to our kids, right? Okay, Flavia likes one of them. Okay, so let's see what else is on some things I want to say. Okay, so when you are in practicing self-compassion, you are reframing your failures into efforts. You're not failing, you're efforting, and some efforts are successful and some are less successful. This is what a growth mindset is all about. Put your own self-care into the family picture. You may be someone who's so busy putting out to try to fix all the fires and set everything up in the family that you don't take care of yourself in any way. And you walk around in a burnt out and depleted. You have to actually allocate some resources to yourself. And those can be small, but you have to feed yourself. Um, you need some resources. So, I'd like to hear from you. What are some ways that you feed yourself? How do you access and increase your personal resources so that you can show up for your kids without judgment, that you can of yourself, that you can value what you offer your children and contribute to their lives? And so Lori says, that's the way I feel. I'm always putting out fires. Right. So if you're always putting out fires, where is there any water left in the well? And how do you put water back in your well? I'd like to hear from some of you. How do you refill your bucket? Because probably many of you have a little hole in your bucket and everything's draining out. You fill it up and there's a slow leak, and then the next day you got to fill it up again. How can you plug that leak so that you can feel like you're not failing yourself? Because if we don't actually put manage our resources so we have something, then you're going to feel like you are failing yourself because you're so exhausted. So please put in what you might do that helps you block the hole in the bucket, or or maybe get a different bucket someday and fill it for yourself. So Trisha says, daily mindfulness practice, taking care of myself by eating healthy foods and exercising, gratitude lists. I love the idea of a nightly gratitude list. Research has found that at the end of the day, if you can write 3 good things that happened in your day, that will help shift your perspective and also build gratitude. Dana says, if you had a parent from the older generation, you felt like you had to get things right the first time, not that failure helps you grow. It's hard not to pass along how you were raised to your own kids. That is so true, Dana. And actually, I don't think I've ever heard anybody say it quite like that. I mean, in my family, it was certainly, but from my father, my way or the highway, and that not getting it right meant you were a failure. There was a lot of blaming and in the house. So I think that it is a challenge if you were never taught something, no matter how much you believe in it, that your default position under stress may be back to what you yourself received, and that's where you can get into a shame spiral. Really, like, oh, I can't believe I'm doing this. I sound just like my mother or my father, and then there's like, what is wrong with me that I can't make this different? Instead of, oops, that wasn't the right choice. Let me find something else again. Susan says a walk with a friend. Excellent. Donnie Feed, devotion and gratitude journal. These are all excellent tools to help you, keep yourself grounded and filling up that bucket. So we have a few minutes left, and I'm wondering if there are any particular challenges that people are facing in being able to pivot in the face of something that's going on with their kids. Like if there's a particular situation, I have time for one or two where your child is really pushing your buttons, and it's hard for you to feel like you're not a failure. Um, Lori, I refill my bucket by going to the beach and getting some vitamin C. Oh, I love that. And I love the play on words. Thank you. So, is there someone who has a situation that they would like to ask a question of me about, or a tip for how can I refill my bucket in this situation? This is a time to ask that question. And again, here is the uh excuse me, here is the downloadable that I let me just get that for you. The downloadable again on shame and how to address that shame and reduce it. So I want to make sure that you can access that. And I would just like to remind you that next Wednesday, I'm doing an attitude webinar at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on ADHD and perfectionism. And I'm hoping that you'll join me. I think you'll learn a lot, and it'll also be a chance for you to ask me specific questions. Melanie, you are the question, so I'm going to take that. I have a 17-year-old daughter who recently called me a whore out of anger. Thank God she did apologize. That is great. I'm wondering, Melanie, if you just didn't get into it with her and then she thought about it herself. I find that as my kids have gotten older, that the less I say, the better it is. Um, let's see, Susan, it's hard to believe, but kids grow up. This is true. Carrie, she sometimes has experiences big emotions in the morning when we are getting ready for school and work, which then we end up rushing. How can I fill my bucket in this case? Perhaps after you take her to school, if you could create in a different time some songs that you could put on your phone or play in your car and sing at the top of your lungs, that can really be great. Or songs you can dance to in your car, or just songs that fill up your spirit and make you happy. I encourage you to do that. Music can be a great tool to help us pivot. So I want to thank you all. I really appreciate the honesty that you brought to our conversation today. I'm so glad you showed up. I hope I'll see you on Wednesday, and I wish you all a wonderful weekend. Thank you so much.